Crank arm shorteners, what are they? Why would you use one or a pair? And how to choose, because there are options. Hello, my name's John from FitKit Systems. Crank arm shorteners are one of our most popular products, and for good reason. But what is a crank arm shortener? It's a piece of metal that is an adapter that you can use over an existing crank arm to provide a choice of different pedal attachment points. So instead of the pedal only going in here, we attach the crank arm shortener to the original pedal hole, and then you can screw your pedal in at a choice of other holes along here. What this does is make your pedal circle a smaller circumference and a smaller diameter. So when you're turning around, the range of motion is reduced. So this is less stress into the hip joint and the knee joint, and less muscular action required if you're being over flexed in those joints. So this is beneficial for people who maybe have some arthritis in the joints, have some injury history, maybe are rehabbing from surgery and have a reduced range of motion. It can also be beneficial for kids with shorter legs. It can also be beneficial for adults who have very short legs for their height and are on a bicycle and just feel like the whole pedaling circle is too big, too lumpy, and they may be suffering some knee or hip pain as a result of trying to turn this large circle. So the crank arm shortener can make that pedal circle smaller and ease the action of actually propelling the bike. We've got two variables to consider when we choose one. The first is the width of the crank arm. Because as we can see here, crank arms can come in different widths. This is quite a narrow arm. This one's wider again, and extra wide right here. So the first thing is to sort of measure a width of the crank arm, and on our product webpage we list what sort of measurements we're after for each size. So we offer these in either a narrow or a wide version. So the appropriate size will cleanly fit over the crank arm and come in flush against it, whereas one that is not the right size, you're not going to be able to get it to fit over the crank arm appropriately, so you're not going to be able to secure it on there. So this one is too narrow for this particular crank arm. So measuring width is really the first step, and making sure the one you choose is appropriate for your particular arm width. Now we do get questions about using them on modern cranksets like this Shimano Ultegra crankset. Even the wide version in either of our attachment models will not go on here. So this is not appropriate for use with a crank arm shortener. But the good news with these is that it's very easy to change the crankset out and do a shorter crankset. Where crank arm shorteners really come into play are indoor exercise bikes, some recumbents, sometimes for use on a tandem if an adult's riding at the front and there's a child on the back. So there's some of the other applications, but mostly it's indoor exercise bikes that have some sort of proprietary crankset, either that's very difficult to change, is not possible to change, or there's simply no options of a shorter arm to go on it. So width was the first variable. The second variable is how we attach them. So all of the crank arm shorteners will have one attachment point here through the pedal hole. That might be a big bolt that screws right through it, or it might be a nut and a flange system. So these will sort of go through here. But the second thing is, how do we then stop it pivoting on the arm? And as well as having a flange, so this one has a flange that sets on the side, but there are also set screws that wind in against the arm and cinch in on it and pinch in on it. So this is the set screw style. These come in and they pinch on here. The second style is what we call the cam style. So instead of a built-in flange, these have wide cams, and these are on a sort of an eccentric circle. We can change how far apart, how close together they are. So if we're using one of those on here, we simply bring them in and we tighten them up to secure them in place there. So why would you choose one over the other? The cam style is probably the more universal fit applicable. There's a little more involved to install them. The set screw's a little simpler, but there's a little more to it than that. If your crank arm has a lot of curvature, then when you attach one of these, you're going to end up with quite a big space here. So the crank arm shortener is straight, the crank's curved, and then we've got the set screw then doesn't have much area to actually pinch in on the edge of the crank arm. So it's not going to be as secure. Whereas if we put a cam style on this, we've got far more width available to actually pinch in and secure this on the side of the arm. So if you've got a curved crank arm, go with cam style for sure. If the crank arm has a fair bit of surface area on the side, doesn't have too much curvature, we can put in a set screw style here, and there's plenty of surface area here for the set screw to come in and secure that. So that's actually a really nice fit right there. User choice at the end of the day. So I've really got two things to consider there in terms of choosing these: the width of the crank arm, and then how straight or curved the arm is, and whether you can get away with the set screw version or whether you need the cam version. Cam version will work on all types, set screw version won't work on all types. There we have it.